Thank you very much for joining me. Mark Hummer here again. We're going to discuss some Nikon products, announcements, and all sorts of lenses, tips and tricks. Now, well, first thing we'd like to start off with is the usual rumour sites, and what we've got announced at the moment is the anticipation of some new releases coming out very soon, probably after the very new camera festival will happen in about a couple of weeks, and then what we'll do is we'll get some releases and information and tech data. Right now, of course, we're right on the edge of the new Nikon Z6 Mark III. We believe that's coming out in a few weeks as an announcement and be an official thing. We all know it's going to have the new X-Speed 7 processor, new body design that'll be better for cooling and efficient, more ergonomically structured body. And I think that'll be a really great seller, certainly a step up from what we've had in the past. So that's exciting. No need to talk too much about that because we've spoken a lot about it in the past. The other thing that's exciting is perhaps the potential then in that release is also another release of a crop sensor body. And we're all anticipating what we will call maybe a Z500 or Z90. That is a high-end crop sensor camera. I'll be very excited if that came out. I'd be a little bit disappointed if it was something like a Z50 Mark II, because really that's not going to be remarkable. But it would be nice if it was a new high-end version of a crop sensor camera, particularly for those who like to do traveling lighter and they like the extra reach of a crop sensor on their primes, and also the fact that that's going to be very good high-speed birding photography gear. Now also there is the very anticipated 35mm F1.2 prime coming out. And that'll complete that series where we have the 85 1.2, the 50 1.2, and then with the 35 1.2, they'll have a full package, a holy trinity of these super primes. So that'll be very nice, particularly I think for those who do a lot of videography. That'll be an exciting option. There is one other release they're looking at, and that is the potential of a, say, 28 to 400mm super zoom, if you like. So that'll be probably a 3.5 to 6.3 aperture, and we'll have something that is super versatile. So that'll be an awesome all walk around lens that'll do pretty much everything. You can do anything from your street photography to portraits to all your wildlife and landscaping, and it'll be just an awesome lens to have for versatility. Now, I don't think it'll be perfect for any one thing, but it will be very versatile for many activities. So having that range of a zoom would be very exciting, particularly as like a travel lens. That could be amazing to have one lens that pretty much got every focal length covered, even if it wasn't a bright aperture. But talking about lenses and bright apertures and all things useful in lenses, that's the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, and that is a recent acquisition of mine. Now on my Z9 here, you'll notice that I have the cage body on it for videography, because I use my Z9 for a lot of videography, and I found that this cage is actually pretty exciting. We'll talk about the cage details in just a minute. I have had a video on this in the past, but right now we're going to talk about the little lens on it. Now you might notice that lens. Isn't she gorgeous? It's a tiny little thing. If I turn it on profile with the light, you can probably see the angle of it and how small it is. It is a tiny little lens, but it's a beautiful item. And so what is this all about? Well, this is the 20mm F2.8 from Viltrox. So no, it's not a Nikon lens specifically, but it is a Z mount lens. So it just snaps straight onto your cameras, whether they be crop sensor or full frame as this one is, and it's so small and light. It's just beautiful and a joy to use. I've been using it for a little bit now, and I'm very, very happy with the results of it. I find it more than sharp enough, certainly very versatile enough. I love the 20mm focal range. It's sort of like a wide lens. It is a wide lens, but it's not so super wide that it distorts everything everywhere around you. It's quite easy to use. It's fun, small in the camera bag, and compact, and very affordable. And that's really the key factor of this lens. What makes it so exciting is that it's so cheap. We're talking about a lens here that's worth only a couple of $100. I bought mine for $257 Australian, which is probably about $158 US. That is pocket change. That's a no-brainer. You don't have to think, should I save up and can I afford this lens? Just go out and buy it. It doesn't matter. It's so cheap. If you don't already have a 20mm in your kit and you were thinking about, oh, well, maybe I'd spend the big dollars on a 14 to 30 S lens, or maybe the 14 to 24 zoom, that could be really cool to have that variety of wide angle. Well, if you're not too sure if you're going to use it very much, buy this one now and you've got a wide angle lens at a decent aperture and you can't lose. For a couple of $100, how can that possibly be a bad investment? So I think it's an amazing little product and I'm really hyping it up. Now I'm going to show you heaps of video samples and photo samples that I've taken very recently to show you that the thing actually does work, and I'm very impressed with it. I think it's sharp. I think it does a great job of performing. The autofocus is more than adequate and the image quality is very nice. And for a couple of $100, well, what a real bargain I believe it to be. So let's just take it off the camera for a second here and we'll have a quick look around it. So what I'll do is I'll just put a little cap on the back of it initially to give you an idea of size and shape and structure of it, and I'll bring up some photos of course. I might be able to bring it up a little bit closer to the camera, and if I'm lucky it'll get that in focus for you. So hopefully that's finding it and got it in focus. Yeah, I think it has now. So it's a beautiful little lens. I'll put up some picture samples of it so you can see it compared with the other awesome lens that's available in this sort of compact size, and this is the 28mm F2.8. Now this is a Nikon lens. It's not an S-line lens, but it's a magnificent lens and I highly recommend it. Whether you're using it on a crop camera or you're using it on a full frame camera, this 28 is absolutely amazing value for money. It's about twice the price of this. It's about, say, $400 Australian or about $280 US. But one of the best value lenses you can buy for being a budget, very useful walk-around lens. It's a semi-wide. It's a little bit more than 24mm at 28, but it's still wide enough to get a lot of the jobs done. Excellent for video work as well. So this one is highly recommended. I'll just put it down here so you can compare. It's got the retro styling, the one I've chosen here. This one here, if you look at it comparatively side by side, it is a little bigger, but then it's a wider aperture. And wider aperture lenses, they're always bigger because there's a lot more work into the glass. Just have a look at the front elements, for example. If you compare those elements, you can see that it's a tiny element in this one, and then it's a much, much bigger element in this one. So obviously it's a bigger element because the 20mm, wider aperture, you need more glass to magnify. So anyway, I'm finding it quite an excellent unit. It's a little bit narrower, but it's a little bit taller. All in all, the weight is almost identical. I think this is like 175 and this one's about 178 grams. It's so much the same, it doesn't matter. But having these two as a collection, for example, both affordable, lightweight, budget lenses, what this means for you is you can have these in your camera bag. You've got a set of wide angle lenses and it's very inexpensive and they're very compact and light in the bag. So you can carry these around with you. You can stack them like this in your camera bag or something and you'll find that in that way they don't take up any room, and whether you use them or not, at least you had them there if you needed to. So it's the idea of having something so light and versatile is amazing, and the fact that there's no expense at all, a couple $100 either one, you're just going to buy them and have them because you can, and they are magnificent. Very good value. The biggest difference I noticed in them when you first start looking at them and investigating their build quality, for example, is you'll notice this, and that is that the Viltrox has the metal mount. It's not weather sealed, but it is a metal mount, and it has that little USB port, which means you can update the firmware in the future. So that's sort of handy, isn't it? Whereas the Nikon equivalent has a plastic mount. Now that's not tragedy because it's such a lightweight lens. You don't need a metal mount for strength and support. It doesn't weigh anything. So where's the strength and support required? Well, it's not. So the plastic mount is more than adequate and does a good job. But in the illustration of this one, they do provide you with a metal mount, and I just think that's a nice little feature. So I'm very impressed with this lens. I give it 10 out of 10, certainly for value, for money, and user friendliness. So I just wanted to stipulate that I love this lens and I think it's a great buy for a couple of $100. Guys, just go out and buy it. Don't even think about it. It's so great value. Another interesting point with these lenses, as you buy them together, if you were to own both of these lenses, another advantage is, of course, that they both have the 52mm filter. So if you've already got a few filters on hand, you've got some 52mm filters. Here I've got a circular ND I'm illustrating here. Here I've got a polarizer, and what you can do is you can interchange these filters with either lenses, and that also includes the other budget lens, the 40mm F2.8. Now that one there, similar size, similar budget, very affordable, and also has the 52mm filters, which means of course you're not buying more filters. So you buy these lenses, you only need a set of filters for all of them, and they're all interchangeable. Which again, when we're talking about being ergonomic in the camera bag and keeping things small, this helps a lot because you're not taking multiple sets of filters around different sizes. One size will fit all of these compact lenses, and I think that's a fantastic option. So I'll run you through a few photos and videos, take a couple of minutes. Just bear with that, and then we'll move on to the next subject we're on to next. So what I'm doing is I'm just videoing this outside picnic area, and I'm going to use with the focus. So I'm going to go touch focus. I'm just going to find some objects to touch. So there I've got a little step just in front of us with a yellow top. Here I'm now going to focus on the decking right in front of me, and then you can see the shallow depth of field occurring, then that bench just behind there, and then I'll try and focus on those little stumps again, and then the trees in the far background. And I think you can see here how, if I go back to the bench, you're getting different perspectives of depth of field. I've got the bench again right in front of me, which blurs everything else out. Then I'm going to go right to the background again. So as I go right to the very far background, and you get a nice focus of those trees, you see the people walking past. So here we are videoing at f2.8, and I'm focusing on the dragon and the water feature. What I'll do is I'll switch it over now and to a different focal range, maybe f5.6, and we'll compare how it looks. So we're now at 5.6 and we're shooting at the dragon. I think it looks a nice setting, looks pretty cute. So hoping you're enjoying the footage. But this is 5.6, previously it was f2.8. So we've got a little bit more in focus at this moment. Okay, so now we're shooting exactly the same thing at the same focus point, but now we're shooting at f8. So I thought I'd give you an idea what things look like at f8. And you know, it's obviously this neutral density filter that I've got. The circular one enables me to brighten it up really quickly. So I was able to go from 2.8 to f8 without any major changes to settings other than the aperture, and then changing the ND brightness or darkness to suit the image. So welcome back, guys. I hope you enjoyed that footage about the 20mm. And did you notice how impressive it was? I think it was fantastic, and I'm very excited. Most of the time I used 20mm was for landscape work, getting a nice wide angle for a photo like that. And also particularly I used it a lot for video work, and I used it for doing often these cosplay solo dance shows. So I've got a few online. If you look at my website, you'll see quite a few cosplay themed dance and singing little acts. And I think that 20mm was fantastic for that, particularly if there were 3 to 6 young ladies doing their dance and singing. You could see that way you get the whole lot in a one shot because it's so nice and wide angle. So that was very handy. And being lightweight, it's great when you're running around with it on a Ronin or on a handheld the camera and using the stabilizing. What you'll find is that because it's lightweight, it's so much easier to keep up and hold. You've got a big, heavy, chunky lens on, then it becomes very burdensome and heavy to hold and hard to balance on the gimbal. These are wonderful little lightweight lenses. It's so easy to balance because everything's centralized and the weight is exactly on what you're holding. It's not dragging forward and tipping the camera down. The lightweight lenses are magnificent. So I've had the 20mm Nikon lens, the S-line one, the 1.8. That was a fantastic lens, very high quality. However, I found that because I now have other options, I don't need that lens anymore. So what I tend to do is I find another option that's a bit lighter or cheaper and does the job for me. I might get rid of that more expensive lens only because I don't feel it's really the value in anymore, and I'll go and purchase something else, and it gives me a chance to swap and change around. And of course, at any time I can always go back to them, buy them again second hand on eBay, which where I get a lot of stuff where I can. So yes, I used it for video, and just for illustration's sake here, I'm going to bring up my Z9 again, and we're going to talk a little bit about the videoing with these lightweight lenses. Now what I like, I'm using the 28 right now instead of the 20, but it doesn't matter, they're both compact. But what it does is it brings all the weight down, because if you've got another kilogram of big heavy lens on, what's happening is it tends to sort of pull you down and you're struggling and to hold it after a while. Oh yeah, it's all very well for 30 seconds to a minute, but after a couple of minutes it all gets a bit hands and starts shaking and it's heavy to hold steady. So what I find is it's very good to have something, well, like this cage is actually very interesting. What I found just recently, and I hadn't thought about this much before, but if I can show you it on profile, you all know you've got a hand grip on the Nikons, but then you've also got a little lump here with the cage. So I'm using now the small rig video cage, and that has something you can use as a grip, believe it or not. I hadn't thought about that before, but the shape of it is such that it protrudes enough that you can actually grip that and hold the camera with that. Now when you hold the hand with the other one, you've got right and left now, you've got something to grip, you can get quite a nice balance and quite a good stabilised video effect just by using the video rig itself. But there's another option that I prefer to do. I'll get into that in just a minute, but I did want to talk to you about some experiences I've had. Now on the bottom here, when you mount the rig, you have your main lug, which locks it in place and keeps it tight. But over here you have an auxiliary locking pin. And what that does, it just stops the tilt and twisting of the mount, because this is a heavy camera. Should you have a heavy lens on as well, there could be some play. So rather than just relying on one screw, they give you a second one to create stabilization. I'm just going to warn everybody who buys this small rig unit, and it is a great unit, I'm not faulting the unit, but don't lose that screw. If that screw, you unscrew that and you drop it and you lose it, it's not something you can just grab another screw out of the toolbox and use. It's a very customized shape, has an extremely small head relative to the thread size. It's only, it's a 6mm roughly thread size, or 1/4 inch, and the head of that screw would be probably 8mm. Just a few mils wider than the thread, which is very unusual. And then also it tapers to a point which fits into a slot in the camera. So what you've got to do is a really customizable screw. Now I did lose it, and that's why I'm bringing this up, and I had to manufacture one, go into my tool shop and actually grind one up to work for me, and that was a lot of hassle. So I'm just warning you that if you have one of these, keep it very safe. If you drop it, pick it up and put it somewhere safe where you won't lose it. I have it here somewhere in my room in a box somewhere. I have that because I would have picked it up off the ground and put it somewhere safe, but I just can't find it now because it looks like every other screw I got in the shop. But anyway, I made something to make do for the moment. But just be warned, don't lose your auxiliary locking pin screw. You really want that, it's hard to replace. I'm sure small rig could replace it, but you don't want to go through all that hassle. Just don't lose it in the first place. The other thing is a point of interest too with this structure is they help you by making it very rigid. So you're not only mounting it with 2 screws down the bottom to keep it sturdy, but they give you another option here, which is a little screw. Now on the side of the camera, you'll see on the cage, it says 2.5mm, and that's where you base the screw, where you mount it for storage. You just screw it in that little threaded hole, and it's always there for you. But when you want to use it to make this rig very strong and sturdy, you'll unscrew that and you'll thread it through where the eyelet would be. So you see that you've got these eyelets. If you take that little lug off and you just leave the mount's got a hole. The screw goes through that hole and into the cage and locks it from the top as well, that little 2.5mm screw. Pictures will be provided close up so you see. And what happens now is it locks the top of the cage to the camera. So you've got 2 screws at the bottom, you've now got one at the top. It's super rigid now, so it's very sturdy and makes it very secure, so there's no wobble, shake or movement. Now that's a great idea, I love all this, but you've just got to know about them to use them. If no one actually points out and says, oh, that 2.5mm little screw there is actually for that location, you wouldn't know. So just bring it to your attention. So having said that, what I like to do is I like to use these little handles, again from small rig, and what you do here is you just mount these onto your camera, and that enables you to very, very quick and very, very simply, if I can just illustrate here, lock them in. Where we go, we're locking that one down, there it is there. Do the same with the other one, they just slide in, it's very, very quick and simple. and you just got to screw them down. And now what I find now is I've got this wonderful facility of very stable and comfortable grips. Now it's not as simple as just the grip and that's all you've got, but what it is, because you're a bit wider now, because it's now broadened out your holding pattern, you now can dig your elbows into your ribs, and it's very comfortable, very straightforward and practical, and that gives you, you're almost like a tripod of your own. You've actually created your body into a tripod. Spread your legs a little bit when you're standing still, and this gives excellent still footage. So you don't need to necessarily bring a monopod or a tripod around with you. If you're in a pinch for room and space and it's maybe a bit of a trip hazard, just use yourself as that tripod and you'll find you'll get very stable footage. When you want to do video footage and move around, you can, and because of this fine balanced grip, you can keep it very sturdy. So I'm highly recommending the cage. I'm not bagging the cage, I was just pointing out some details with the screws and mounts so you understand how it's used properly and mounted. The other thing about these handles, which is just magnificent, is that they rotate and then they lock into position wherever you have them. So you can see here it's on an angle now. They both do that either side. And of course what that provides then is your ability to have different standing positions. So you can have this really down low, or when you release it and you have it, if I just do it a bit differently like that, you can see how you could be videoing up high and holding it like this, really up high over a crowd, for example, and you can make your arms very comfortable. So this tilting adjusting position, which is just this lever up top with your thumbs, you just rotate that, locks into position however you want them. It's very safe and secure, it isn't going anywhere, and they're very strong. So I'm just highly recommending this. We're talking about video and why I'm having these lenses like the Viltrox 20mm, for example, or the Nikon 28, and I love them because they're lightweight. When you're holding the camera in your own hands, anything you can do to reduce the weight's a bonus. It's not too bad on a Z6 or a ZFC or something like that, but once you've got a heavy Z9, mate, you want all the help you can get to make that lighter or more practical for the hours of use you might be using it for. So that's a general summary of what we're talking about today. I'm going to leave you with just one final little tip and trick, and that is this one here. And that is, we talk about filters a lot because they're so essential with video work. But this here is simply a circular polarizer. Now, some may use UV filters, a clear UV filter to protect the front of their lenses. And that's a good idea as far as protecting the main element. But I find that if I'm going to put something on to protect it, I want something that's actually functional. And at least a circular polarizer where you can get rid of glare and all the reflections, I find that that's actually a more practical means of protecting your lenses. So yes, it protects it from immediate scratches and dents. I mean, I'd rather throw this away than my lens, particularly if it's a very expensive one. If I have a lens like this that's worth a couple $100, well, protecting it or not, it's not that big a deal to me because it's cheap and you can always replace it. But if you've got a $2,000, $3,000 lens, S-line lens, you're going to want to protect it with something. I just tend to use the polarizer. I can leave it on. It doesn't reduce much light, but it certainly reduces a lot of glare and provides protection that's actually functional and useful. So guys, yes, we're just talking about this nice handled rig, this cage, and for video use, how useful that is, and the fact that they all share the same filters, which is great. Now, I was talking about here, we had the 20mm Viltrox lens, which I highly recommend. I got the 28 here, and you might say, well, what if you need greater focal lengths? Well, I have other lenses, but one of the chief Nikon lenses I can use for pretty much any focal length I might need for video is this one here, and this is the Nikon 24-70 F4. And of course this one here, if I put this on the camera, now I've got everything from 24-70 on tap. It is f4, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's f4 across the frame, it's not variable, so that's nice and consistent. But it does mean that I have other focal ranges. So in between 20 and 28 is 24mm, and 24mm is covered in this lens here. And as well as it goes up to 50-70 for those zoom in times that I need. So I've got a versatile little package of lenses for video work. This one is very good for general videography, but when you need a little bit brighter aperture, I like using the primes because they are a little bit brighter, especially when you're going super wide. If you're going super wide, for example, like 20mm and more, what's happening is you're losing your depth of field anyway. So you really, as far as shallow depth of field goes, that's not really the relevance. It's really more about just having the wideness and also having a reasonable aperture, so you've got a sufficient brightness, and that's where the 2.8 is very useful. So there is another lens coming out from Viltrox, which I'm very excited about, and that is a 16mm F1.8. That'll be a full frame lens, and I believe it to be one of their higher line quality lenses. Probably $700–850, somewhere around that mark to purchase it. That's very, very good value for what that is. That's something I would be excited to get in my collection of lenses. So it's going to be still relatively light. It's going to be relatively affordable, even though it's pushing up to more of $1,000 than it is $500. It's still, for what it is, which is a 16mm ultra wide of high quality and an f1.8 aperture, that is going to be an excellent extra to have, particularly I think for those doing things like real estate photography. When you're getting into close close little tight areas and rooms, you might do a bathroom or a kitchen or a laundry, and you're trying to take some photos of these rooms or small bedrooms, and you need that extra width. So that having with you in your kit would be awesome. The fact that it's ultra bright as well, very handy to get those shots looking really nice and bright. So that's an exciting release coming as well. I did want to throw that in at the end. There's nothing confirmed, but there's a lot of rumours about it coming very shortly. I would imagine within the next 6 weeks we'll get an announcement from Viltrox that is coming. And also they are also bringing out some other lenses like a 135 1.8 as Nikon have, that planner. It won't be as good as the planner, of course, because it's going to be a budget version, even though it'll be their top end machining and quality of build. It's not going to be up there with the Nikon quality because sheer affordability. They'll try and keep it as affordable and cheap as possible. That's always been their motto. So there's a lot to look forward to in the aftermarket products as well. I'm highly recommending the Viltrox products because I think that they actually are very excellent value for money. You know, if you want something high-end, by all means, go buy yourself an S-line lens. They're going to be the better quality. The build quality is going to be stronger and it'll probably last a lot longer. But if you're getting into the market, if you're experimenting with lens focal lengths and you're just not sure if you want to commit, buying a Viltrox version and trying it out is a great way of introducing yourself into a particular focal length to see if it suits you. Then if it does, and you then have the courage then to spend up big on either some expensive S-line zoom or perhaps a prime from Nikon, then I highly recommend you do that once you're confident that you're actually going to use it. There's so many lenses I've spent big money on, and I find they just sit in the cupboard there and waste of space and waste of money. So it is good to try them out first to see if you're actually going to use those focal lengths before you spend $3,000 to $4,000 on a high-end zoom lens and only just let it sit there in the cupboard and you find you hardly bring it out. Now we're talking about this cage, and just one other thing before I go, I'll show you. You might have seen this in the corner and wondering what the hell is that? Well, it's like a little mock-up tripod. It's actually very useful for on benches when you just want to say, let's say you want to do a selfie and film yourself. You could mount your camera on this and do a great job of that. But let me just show you the Z here mounted on it. So if I just open this up, we put it in there. Okay, just screwing it down tight so I know it's safe, and there it is. And see, we're illustrating that this is like a tripod. As it does extend up and down, that's quite handy. So you can make adjustments with that. You could use that as doing your own selfies if you like. But the point I'm just making here is these cages also have built into them an Arco-Swiss mount at the bottom. So you don't have to have an extra mount. Of course, that's actually into the rig and the design. So I'm just illustrating that it does, and it uses it there. Now, when you're using like these handles, for example, and you're going back and forth, you might be going back and forth between a tripod mount and then going back and forth between holding it to get pans and zooming around. So it's a flick of a switch, isn't it, to get that off, and then you're back to hand-free movement, going wherever you like, and then you can just plonk it back onto your tripod, which I'm using this as a mock-up of right now, lock it down nice and safe, and then you can let go, walk off and do some other activities, maybe take some photos while this is still filming for you. So yeah, it's a very versatile rig. These specific video brackets, they are still tailor-made to the shape of Nikon, so you can see that the Z mount is all catered for. You can still grip it, you can still take photos, but at the same time, you know, what a versatile accessory to be able to mount so many things to and have all those options available for photo and video. So anyway, thank you once again for your time. I just wanted to close down the discussion today with that and say I really appreciate your time watching my videos, and I hope I can continue being useful. Anything you want to know or hear about or discuss, please leave in the comments below, and I'll definitely bring it out in the next video. So have a great night, and thank you for your time.